Hi, everyone. Hello. Cool. So I've actually been at Box for over a year now, and I started out in the customer success department. So I've been here ever since we first really had that customer success client-facing role at Box. And a lot has changed in a year. Implementation strategies have completely changed. The clientele itself has completely changed. It wasn't necessarily that 77% of the Fortune 500 that we see now. And but one thing that has not changed is my clients love to ask me questions. It's a very fun part of my job. And so I wanted to share with you guys one of the top questions that my clients have asked me over many, many implementations that I've done. And so the top question is, what have other clients done to achieve a successful Box deployment? This is a question that is guaranteed every single time I talk to a client for the very first time. And a lot of times they're not even asking me what they should do. They're asking what other clients in their industry or similar use cases have done. So my first answer, it's all the basic stuff. It's a very strong admin team on your end. That's first and foremost very important. The second thing that I think is huge is really training. So training your end users, training your admin team, getting them knowledgeable, and just understanding the ins and outs of Box. That's the second one. And the third one that I think is huge that not a lot of people realize is really strong messaging. So before going live, a lot of people, they just send one email to inside or to their company saying, hey, we got a new tool. Here's your login. Go ahead and get started. So those are really three things that I've seen that's a trend. But when I like to sum it up, I sum it up into really two factors that I see as very important for any successful Box implementation. Really, whatever use case you have, whatever industry you're in, it's really focusing on structure and workflow. So when I say structure and workflow, I don't mean strategizing just in the first week or first month of implementation. This can be in the middle of it. It can be towards once you're fully live. It can be when your entire company is already using Box. But two key things, once again, is structure and workflow. So I know I only have about 20 minutes today, so I'm going to narrow it down to really two factors and two very specific use cases of folder structure that I've seen a lot of clients use that have had very successful deployments. And the first one I'm going to go over is lockdown versus open mode. So the idea is that when clients first come to me, they're very concerned about kind of the back end of Box, all the security, all the auditing trail, stuff like that. But when we do the implementation process, what's very important is utilizing front-end security, right? So understanding how if front-end security on folders work, how front-end security permissions for end users work, and how to really utilize the admin console, right? So that's the first one. The second one is really effectively setting up your account for multiple use cases. So on this slide here, these are kind of the 8 use cases I see a lot of clients coming to Box for. And some might be relevant for your team right now. You might see others that you've heard of. You might have not thought about it before. And some of you guys might actually be using multiple use cases that you see on this screen. And for some people, you might not even see your use case up there, which is really good. But the idea is that, and how this comes back to folder structure, is by creating a folder structure and strategizing what you're allowing your end users to have even the first time they log into their account. And this might be relevant 6 months down the road when you have another department joining Box, is creating an environment where it defines a use case, right? So if you have a use case where it's internal collaboration, then the best thing an admin can do is to essentially set up a folder structure for internal collaboration. And I'll go into that a bit later. But the idea is that if a sales rep first comes into Box and there's already a very clearly marked sales folder, or there's a very clearly marked subfolder under that called contracts, then they're already used to their workflow and they know kind of where to put things and where to upload things, where to collaborate on, and they don't go ahead and create their own folders where it gets very confusing, where there's 2 different people that create a folder for contracts and 3 other people create a folder for sales, right? Cool. So I like to think of it this way. By strategically choosing a folder structure, you're already one step ahead in achieving a successful Box deployment, right? And it might sound kind of cheesy, but the idea is that wherever you are in your implementation, whether it's even that first initial stage of implementation, or you just have a second use case that you want, to implement down the road when you're already fully live. By creating that folder structure, you're really setting that environment and that tone for your end users to go in and be ready to use that use case. Okay, cool. So the first thing I'm going to go over as far as folder structure is what I like to call lockdown versus open mode. I call it lockdown mode. It might sound a little extreme, but the idea is that there's a security setting in the admin console where you can essentially limit content creation at root. And I know that's not the most intuitive title for that, but the idea is this, is that some admins like full control over their folder structure. So the idea is that you can create a root level folder structure, and I'll go over some samples later, that you're forcing your end users to use. So the idea is that they can't create their own top level folders, only the administrators can create top level folders. So an administrator would create a sales folder, they would create an engineering folder, they would create an operations folder, and users can't create another operations folder, they have to work within that folder. So it limits that potential for someone to create duplicate folders, and at the same time, the admin has full control over that entire folder structure, right? Who uses it? It's really any large corporation, and I put large corporations, but I see a lot of smaller businesses using it, where admins really want full control. And I see this a lot for internal collaboration use cases, where I've done hundreds and hundreds of users in one single account, and they don't want that small potential of someone duplicating a folder, right? 100 people using this folder, 800 people using this folder. It's chaotic, not just for the admin, but for the end users, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and switch into an actual live presentation. I figured it'd be a bit more intuitive. So I'm not sure if you guys can see in the back, but this is a really basic template that some of you guys might look familiar to you guys if you guys are doing kind of a company-wide deployment. But as you can see right here, it's a top-level folder structure owned entirely by the administrator, okay? So he's the owner of every top-level folder. When people come into the system, they actually have to work in that folder. And you can see the other use cases where they might have a Salesforce integration, and once again, this is a top-level folder that the administrator owns. And if they want to create personal folders for their end users because they can't create their own private workspace, it's still monitored and regulated by the admin, but they can still have that private workspace if they want, right? So this is a huge use case, and some people that really use Box for open collaboration, this obviously doesn't apply, right? Some people like their end users to use it as personal drives. I just did a very large deployment for a great company that decided that Box would be their personal storage drive. And they came in with that use case, but only 3 months down the road, they're deciding that it would be good to have the second use case in their same Box account. So while they have separate business units that are all using Box for personal storage and personal drives, they're also having their exec team and their sales team and marketing team using Box as departmental drives, right? And having different use cases in one account really adds value. So that's the whole thing that Aaron was talking about at first, where for servers, it's kind of, you don't want multiple use cases, it's really confusing. But for Box, the more use cases you have, not only is it better for an administrator because everything's centralized under one place, but the end users are getting a lot more value out of Box, okay? The second thing I'm gonna go over, and not a lot of people know about it, is what we call a virtual deal room. So this is one type of a secure portal that people can create within their Box accounts. And the use cases it's a very broad set of use cases. So for example, I have a very large construction company, and it's really interesting. So what they do is they create this virtual deal room, and let me show you guys the settings, kind of going into the whole folder structure enterprise settings that they set. What they do is that they created literally one folder called VDR. For them, they call it like their mergers and acquisitions folder. And what they do is they disable shared links so people can't freely share. They restrict invite privilege, so only the admins can invite people. They hide collaborators, which it's pretty straightforward. And they disable commenting, so there's not random people making comments, and you can obviously see who commented, right? So for the construction company, what they do is they have real estate properties that they bid on for construction sites. And on one side, you have the people that are uploading pictures or blueprints into a folder. And then on the other side, you have people coming in and actually bidding on those landmarks and those sites, right? But the idea is that no one knows who else is in the folder. So they've created a secure portal in Box while still using the entire departmental folder use case. And internally in Box, just to give you an idea, we use it just as a secure portal. So we have a lot of partner programs. We put everything in there, and it's a very safe place for people to download items and they can preview it. A lot of times people invite collaborators in that folder as only previewers. But the idea is that no information will leave, right? You have full control. You can run auditing reports. If you're doing mergers and acquisitions, or you're even a law firm, or whatever industry you're in, I think all industries can have some sort of benefit from creating this secure portal in Box, okay? So what I went over so far is really managing folder structure for administrators. And I think most of the people in this room are probably admins in their account. I'm not sure if a lot of you guys are end users. But from an end user perspective, even though it's very secure and it's a very controlled environment, it's a lot easier for them to use, right? Because they don't have to go into their account. They don't have to try to figure out how they're going to create a folder structure, how they should use Box. It's already predetermined by the Box admin, right? Cool. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys is really kind of what end users use, and it's just some tips and tricks that I've seen. So for example, for the virtual deal room, a lot of people aren't necessarily Box users. And I have a lot of clients come to me and say, hey, you know, I have this use case for a VDR. I want my managed team members, which are people in their company, using Box, and they're in this particular folder. So for example, a sales manager or a finance manager. But at the same time, they want people to upload things into this folder that do not have a Box account, right? Either they don't want to buy the license, or it's a one-time share. They're literally submitting some sort of picture or some sort of document for other people to bid on or other people to download. So what I tell them, and once again, this isn't too obvious, is that one of them is actually embedding an upload widget. So a lot of people, what they do is they literally put this on their website, and there's HTML code right here. But what people don't know about is that when you click preview this widget, what happens is that you actually get a URL for this link. So for example, if you have a client that wants to submit, once again, a landmark site or some real estate site, and you don't want them to have a Box account, but at the same time, you want them to have that security that comes with Box and that nice 2 gigabyte limit, you can literally just send this link in an email, and of course it'll be custom branded with your account and your domain, but they can upload that file using this method. And once again, they don't even have to have a Box account. Cool. All right, and the last one I'll show you guys before I open it up for questions, just going into here, is kind of the folder structure once again for internal collaboration. So how we use Box a lot is that we have departmental folders. We have a sales folder, we have a marketing folder, and the idea is that when you're in a folder, using Box permissions, you can really narrow it down to projects, you can narrow it down to use cases, but you can see how intuitive it is when you set up this folder structure, right? So I have a lot of very large corporations that are using it for their sales team, but they have one sales team in the West Coast region, another sales team in the East Coast region. And with Box permissions and with this kind of designed folder structure, it's very, very easy to actually just, invite someone to this West Coast region. That's their work environment, and they can create whatever folders under there. But if you're using the lockdown mode, they can't create any top-level folders themselves. Okay. All right, so that's actually what I wanted to go over today. I'll open it up for questions now. Yes, sir.
I had a question specifically about something I think you guys are working on. It's regarding lockdown mode.
Okay.
So say you have a high-level folder like a finance or an operation, it's a very large folder with many subfolders.
Sure.
One of the things we're looking for is a way to have people have the ability to sync subfolders.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's...
Yeah, so that's actually in the pipeline right now. It was not announced today, but that's a feature we're working on. And the idea that not a lot of people realize is that, okay, so let's say I'm on the operations team and I own the top level folder. So I can only sync the operations folder because that's my top level folder. But if I have a bunch of subfolders, and many times only 1 or 2 people should own a top level folder, it's probably the admins. If I have a subfolder in here, if I invite, one of my interns or one of my operation managers that works under me, this becomes their top level folder. So the idea is that they can sync it while I can sync the top level folder. But to answer your question, we are working on subfolder sync.
And it's a second quick question. Is
Sure.
there subfolder group permissioning in the works as well?
What do you mean? Like for?
So say there's a group called finance.
Mhm.
Most people have finance, but then there's a further secured folder within finance. You want to say, now this group can get into the more secure folder, but
Mhm.
the top level group cannot.
Yeah, so unfortunately how Box is built by design, and not really unfortunately, it's actually a lot easier to use. What you would do is you would have to create two subfolders because everything in Box has a waterfall effect. So if someone's an editor at a top level folder, they're going to be an editor on all content under that, so all subfolders under that. So what you would do is you would just create another folder on the same level and invite that other group into that folder. And from a management perspective, it's a lot easier because you don't have to figure out, okay, this group's in this top level folder, do they have access in this subfolder? You clearly know who has access in what folder and all the subcontent under it. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes, sir.
If you go to the All Files tab,
Sure.
have you guys considered possibly changing that share link right there? Because does it create sort of a public link that you don't have to be logged into Box
Yeah.
to actually view that particular folder or its contents, right?
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of the users end up clicking on that thinking that they're going to share it with someone internally, but
Mhm.
they end up generating this sort of public link, and it's not necessarily very clear
Mhm.
as to what it does.
It's a really good question. So let me show you guys what we have now for shared links, and I think a lot of you guys use this, and I'll go over what we will have in the near future that was actually announced today. So the first thing, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the shared links, it's just like an FTP replacement. So if I have a folder, I can literally email out this link from within my Box account, and that end recipient, and that end recipient receives that link. They do not have to be a Box user, right? And you can only send this shared link out if you are at least a viewer in that folder, meaning that you already have the ability to download that file and email it out if you want. So with the shared link, it doesn't change any security permissions. The idea is it makes it easier to do what you already can do, right? But there is a lot of concern that a lot of users send shared links out recklessly, or they're not aware what's floating around, or they forget that they sent this link and it can easily be sent out to someone else. So the other feature that we have in place before I go over what we will have is actually an expiration. So you can set an expiration for a shared link. So if you don't want it floating around indefinitely, you can just unshare it on end of month or end of quarter, and on that date when that person visits that URL, it says this URL has expired. Now what was mentioned today, and I forgot who presented it, we actually have a new feature coming out where you can use shared links, but the folder owner can limit it to only people in your company. So it would be based on domain. So that's a new feature that is coming out, and I think that's what you're looking for. Cool. Yes, sir.
Can I have multiple sharing links per folder? So some expire in 2 days, some expire never.
That's an interesting question. Unfortunately, no. You would have to copy that folder, and you would copy that folder, duplicate it, and create two different links. So essentially, it's two different folders, but you can't have two different expirations because it wouldn't recognize who has that link because you don't have to sign in for a Box account. So there's no way to recognize that. And we could tie it to IP address, but people might be on different devices. So yeah, we have to have two separate folders for that. Yes, sir.
Can you set up a template folder structure that you then replicate for future folders, and will the permissions migrate when you replicate it for, say, a new project?
Yeah, definitely. So that's an interesting idea. What I have a lot of people do is that they already have a folder structure in mind, or they already have one on their desktop. So they use the sync tool, and they'll literally drag an entire folder structure into sync, or they'll bulk upload a blank template. And that blank template is in Box. So if you have a bunch of embedded folders, it's already in there. And then they do all the front-end security settings on that folder structure. And then they keep that as a template, and then they copy it. So you copy it, and it copies the permissions. but the idea is that you keep a template always ready, and then you can just duplicate it whenever you want. But it doesn't apply if, you know, there's a bunch of collaborators in there. It won't duplicate the collaborators, but I don't think that's what you would want. So, yes, sir.
Can you set up lockdown mode and open mode for different folders?
You cannot set it for different folders. So let me show you guys really quickly. So lockdown mode is an account-wide setting in the admin settings. So it's the most extreme form of limiting content creation at root, but the workaround for that is doing it by user. So how you would do it is that when you guys allocate storage space to a user, you could allocate some users unlimited space and other users 0 gigabytes. So when they have 0 gigabytes, they cannot create their own folder. So that's one set of users. And for the other users, if you give them like 5 gigabytes or unlimited, then they can create folders. So in that way, you're choosing groups and you're not applying the setting to everyone. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
More of a feature request on expiration.
Okay.
Do you guys plan to ever allow for specific date and time expiration, or is it always going to be like 10 days, 30 days? You have to do math when you, say you have a day.
Yeah.
It's going to expire on, you have to like do the math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so right now, the only thing we have, and this is, I'll go talk to my product manager right after this, but currently it's not at a time, it's just on a date, and that date would actually be a calendar date. So it's literally a pop-up of a calendar, and then you choose the actual day for that. Do you want an actual time, like 3 p.m.? Okay. I'll submit it as a feature request, or yeah, I can introduce you to the product manager. Okay. All right, I'll direct you guys towards Brandon Savage, and he's out there. Any other questions? Anything? Yep.
Kind of an odd question. Is there a way, or is it in the works to, will it always be that a Boxsync user has to have editor rights to sync?
That's the question I get every day. So the idea currently is that if you can download it on your local machine, that you have to be an editor, because when it's on your local machine, you can obviously edit it. Something that we are considering, and I don't have like a date for it being released, is having a read-only sync where you constantly update documents and that end recipient gets the latest version, but they can't make any edits. Now the workaround for that right now is you can create a folder, put a bunch of collateral in it, but you can lock every single document so they can't open it. So that's a hacky workaround right now, but it is a workaround. Yep, huge feature request though. Yes, sir.
Another one regarding sync. One use case that we have is we want to basically synchronize everything that lives on a file server
Mm-hmm.
to Box. So will the new sync, or will sync at some point allow that kind of interaction rather than having to be logged in as a user?
Yep.
Will it be a server level?
So server sync's a huge request, and the last time I asked my product manager, he said end of Q4, but don't quote me on that. Okay, thanks guys, out of time, but thank you.